Welcome back. So, as we're talking right now, the first game of the group stage is happening, Switzerland, Spain. But before we get all into the knockout stage, I wanted to talk about the group stage, recapping some key highlights, ups and downs, upsets, and discussing my predictions that I released a week before the World Cup and comparing them to what actually happened. So, let's get into it. Let's start off with Group A. My initial predictions were Norway, Switzerland, New Zealand, and then the Philippines. And when I initially made this, I thought it was going to be a lot more clear cut than it actually happened to be. If we look at the points here, we have 5, 4, 4, 3, which indicates that there was quite a bit of battle to win these spots. Norway, being so much higher ranked than all these other teams, definitely was the favorite going into this World Cup, but it just shows how the gap in women's soccer is closing so rapidly. Coming into that first game, New Zealand stamped their authority as the host nation, winning in that 1-0 match, but after then they lost to the Philippines, and then Norway tied to Switzerland. So there was a lot up in the air going to that last game, and I think Norway got lucky, even though we can give them some credit because they really stamped their authority in that Philippines game and try to show that they did still deserve that spot in the knockout stage. So I'm really excited to see how they go up against a dominant Japan later today and see if they can make it to the quarterfinals. Jump into Group B. My initial predictions were Australia, Canada, Ireland, and then Nigeria. And I'm honestly embarrassed to say I didn't even give Nigeria a thought when putting them in that fourth spot. But they definitely showed me I should have, because in this tournament, I think I had Canada second just because of how rankings have gone in past tournaments, how it's been. And I think we even thought Ireland could have been a breakout star, and so Nigeria just wasn't really on my mind when making these. But I think Canada didn't step up in this tournament. From that first game against Nigeria, the midfield was poor, and in the last game against Australia, the defense was extremely poor. Ireland, though they have a lot of talent, they're not able to convert in the ways they need to win big tournaments. Nigeria, even though it could be considered scrappy to get of 2 ties and a win, I still think they were really deserving of this opportunity just with how much power and grit they played with, and especially to get that win against Australia in that tight 3-2 match. So I'm honestly excited to see what they can do against a really dominant England team coming off that Euro 2022 win. And I'm also excited for Australia as a host nation to see how they fare against Denmark, considering I think they do have the easier draw in that match, not having to play England, and do have the opportunity to make it quite far now. To Group C. So my predictions starting off were Spain, Japan, Zambia, and then Costa Rica. And I think for Zambia, I had seen them as a possible breakout star this tournament, and I think commentators did as well. But it didn't happen to be that way. They lost to Japan 5-0 and then happened to lose to Spain 5-0 again. And I think this could be attributed to a little bit of an inexperience on the world stage. The attacking line just wasn't able to have those finishing skills against these top-level teams. And also in that back line, they were too rigid for an attack that's so filled with quality from Japan and Spain. I do, however, feel that because of how quickly the gap in women's soccer is closing, a team like Zambia is going to have more opportunities on the world stage, and I do see them having a bright future, especially because they can convert, as we've seen them before. As for Japan, I didn't actually think about them as being too much of a contender for the trophy this year, but the way they're playing is absolutely exquisite. I think that they are able to take advantage of every opportunity they get, which is the Japanese style, as we've seen. And the fact that they're so lethal on the counter has proved to be so useful for them. And even if we have teams like Spain, who had that beautiful possession game, even the Netherlands, I think Japan can definitely counter against these teams, and I'm really excited to see what they can do in this knockout stage. We're now into Group D, and there's not too much I wanted to talk about here, even though I did get this prediction completely right with England, Denmark, China, and then Haiti. Specifically, though, England to me is going to be an important contender in this tournament just because of how they've been gaining momentum. In that first game against Haiti, where they literally won because of a penalty retake, I honestly lost a little bit of confidence. But then after that 1-0 win against Denmark, and then that really convincing win against China with players like Lauren James stepping up, I honestly think that they're gaining momentum at the right time, and they definitely have a chance to make it pretty far in this tournament and be a force to contend with. Let's jump into Group E. my initial predictions were the US, Netherlands, Portugal, and Vietnam. And having the US at that first spot, I put a lot of faith in them, and I don't think they delivered. The US Portugal game was a special low point because I just think that they looked so disjointed, lacking chemistry, and they're not going to go into a game against Sweden and win it if they continue playing like that. So I hope that Carly Lloyd's criticism wakes them up, and I hope that they go into that knockout stage gaining momentum, because if they're not peaking in this group stage, I hope they peak there. A really depressing statistic I learned was that the US has always won 2+ games in the group stage. This is the first time they haven't. So I definitely believe it's showing signs that this US team is not as dominant as before, and I hope they can prove to the world that they still deserve to be number one, especially with the Netherlands coming off that 7-0 win against Vietnam and having that easier first knockout game. So I think that they have the momentum, and we need to prove we also do. Okay, let's get into Group F, and this one's a big one for me just because of Jamaica as that breakout star, eliminating Brazil. My initial predictions were Brazil, France, Jamaica, and then Panama. And I think that Jamaica, from that first game against France, setting that tone with that tie against a top quality team, showed that they were here to make a bite. Brazil, however, I really thought was going to make it far in this tournament just with how convincingly, with how beautifully they played against Panama. It was a absolute great start for the World Cup for them, and I think they're going to really rue not doing better in their opportunities, because that France-Brazil game is really what it came down to and made the difference, as you can see, points-wise with the 7-4 here. So if Brazil had beaten France, that could have changed this whole table. But I think I really want to acknowledge Jamaica, same as Nigeria, their ability to hold these big teams to ties and capitalize on opportunities and get themselves into knockout stage spots. We're on Group G, and my initial predictions were Sweden, Italy, Argentina, and then South Africa. And I think my predictions would have been right if this South Africa-Italy game had gone differently and Italy had won. And I think that tragic own goal contributed to some of the problems that Italy had. But I think that we can also attribute it to the quality of South Africa, because starting from that game against Sweden, we saw that their ability to counterattack, come back again and again, and I think they were gaining momentum, and I think they're going to fight that knockout stage game really hard. I also think Sweden is going into the knockout stage with a lot of momentum, because even though they had a rough first game, barely squeaking by, they really showed up in that game against Italy, and then Argentina, again, a convincing win. So I think the US is going to need to show up, otherwise Sweden will demolish them. And I think South Africa is going to give Netherlands a hard fight as well. We're into Group H. And this one's another big one for me just because Germany got knocked out as number 2 in the world and even a World Cup winning contender. So my predictions were Germany, then South Korea, then Colombia, and then Morocco. And this one I really got all wrong. Colombia is the breakout star of this group for me. It's not just Linda Caicedo as a really impressive 18-year-old. It's the entire team playing at the level of a top 10 team. And I think they could have a possibility of making it far in this tournament. Another team I really wanted to note was Morocco, because going into that first game against Germany, they got absolutely demolished. And I think Germany having a quite easier group would probably be a little overconfident, which might have contributed to their downfall. But Morocco was able to come back from a 6-0 loss and beat South Korea and beat Colombia. And I think that shows so much passion, so much perseverance, and even though I don't know if they're going to be able to make it far in this tournament with the level they're at, I do believe that teams like this are what is making women's soccer even better as time goes on. So now that we've recapped the group stage, I hope you go into watching the knockouts with a new appreciation for all the teams. Something that's just been so important to me is how the gap in women's soccer is closing. And in the past, I think my predictions of the 2019 World Cup would have been a lot more definitive. But now it's honestly a toss-up, because both teams are on the field having so much quality, playing with so much fight, and I'm just honestly excited to see what happens. So thank you for watching.